Hello and welcome to Healthy Lifestyle Tips. Today, we're going to take a closer look at a topic that many people may not like to think about: drowning. While it's not a pleasant thought, it's important to understand what happens when you drown so that you can take steps to stay safe in and around water. So, let's dive in and explore what happens when you drown step by step. Step 1. The breath-holding phase. When you first enter the water, whether intentionally or accidentally, your natural instinct is to take a deep breath and hold it. This is because humans are not naturally equipped to breathe underwater. During the breath-holding phase, your body will immediately recognize the lack of air and respond by slowing your heart rate and reducing blood flow to non-essential organs in an effort to conserve oxygen. This response is known as the mammalian diving reflex. The diving reflex is an automatic response triggered by the body in response to cold water and lack of oxygen. It is a survival mechanism that has evolved over time to help humans stay alive in water. This response is similar to the fight or flight response, but it is designed specifically for water survival. It involves a series of physiological changes that help the body conserve oxygen and stay alive in an oxygen-deprived environment. The heart rate slows down to reduce oxygen consumption, and blood is diverted away from non-essential organs and towards the brain and heart. This is why you may feel a sudden cold sensation in your hands and feet, as blood flow to these areas is reduced. The breath-holding phase typically lasts for around 30 seconds. During this time, your body is trying to conserve as much oxygen as possible. It is important to note that the breath-holding phase can be extended by trained individuals who have learned to control their breathing and remain calm in water. However, for most people, the breath-holding phase lasts for only a short period of time before they begin to feel the effects of oxygen deprivation. Step 2. The panic phase. This phase is characterized by the onset of the first signs of oxygen deprivation in the body. As oxygen levels begin to drop, your body will react by triggering a panic response. This response is an innate survival mechanism that aims to increase your chances of finding air. During the panic phase, you may experience a strong urge to breathe, which can cause you to hyperventilate and breathe faster than you should. This can quickly lead to a buildup of carbon dioxide in your body, which can make you feel dizzy, disoriented, and confused. As the panic intensifies, you may begin to thrash around in the water, struggling to stay afloat and find air. This can quickly deplete your energy and cause you to become exhausted. The panic phase is a critical stage in the drowning process, as it's often the point at which people become most vulnerable to drowning. The panic response can override your ability to think clearly and rationally, making it difficult to take deliberate actions that could help you stay afloat. Additionally, the increased physical activity during the panic phase can quickly use up your remaining oxygen reserves, making it even harder to hold your breath or stay afloat. To make matters worse, the panic phase is often accompanied by a feeling of suffocation, which can make it difficult to remain calm and focused. This feeling can cause you to swallow water, which can further exacerbate the situation by making it harder to breathe and increasing the risk of drowning. Step 3. The hypoxic convulsion phase. This phase occurs when the body has been deprived of oxygen for an extended period of time and is unable to sustain normal bodily functions. As a result, the body's muscles will begin to contract involuntarily, causing a violent thrashing of the limbs and body. These convulsions are a natural response to the brain's attempt to get more oxygen to the body. During this phase, the body's cells are struggling to survive due to the lack of oxygen. The cells require oxygen to produce energy, and without it, they cannot function correctly. This can lead to a buildup of lactic acid, which can further exacerbate muscle contractions and make them more violent. As the hypoxic convulsion phase progresses, the victim's breathing will become more erratic, shallow, and desperate. The brain will continue to send signals to the body to try to breathe, but without oxygen, these signals become weaker and less effective. Eventually, the body will begin to shut down, and the victim will lose consciousness. It's important to note that during the hypoxic convulsion phase, the victim may be unaware of what's happening to them. They may not realize that they are drowning and may not be able to signal for help. This is why it's essential to always have a buddy or a lifeguard present when swimming or participating in water activities. Step 4. The passive drowning phase. This is the phase that occurs once an individual has lost consciousness due to oxygen deprivation. At this point, the body has exhausted all its resources in its attempt to fight for air, and the respiratory muscles have failed, leading to the inhalation of water. Once unconsciousness sets in, the body becomes entirely passive, and the individual becomes unable to control their movements or attempt to swim to the surface. During this phase, the body will start to sink to the bottom of the water, and the lungs will begin to fill with water, a process called pulmonary edema. Pulmonary edema happens when the capillaries in the lungs begin to leak fluid into the air sacs, causing them to fill with water instead of air. This can lead to a decreased ability to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide in the lungs, which can further exacerbate oxygen deprivation. It's important to note that during the passive drowning phase, the victim is not thrashing around or making noise as seen in movies. Contrary to popular belief, drowning is usually a silent event, as the victim is unable to inhale enough air to scream or call for help. This is why it's crucial for those around the victim to remain vigilant and aware of their surroundings to recognize when someone may be in distress. The passive drowning phase can last for several minutes, depending on factors such as water temperature, the individual's physical condition, and how long they were underwater before losing consciousness. Therefore, it's essential to perform CPR as soon as possible and to call emergency services if you suspect someone has drowned. Step 5. The clinical death phase. During this phase, the brain begins to suffer irreversible damage due to a lack of oxygen, which is essential for the brain's proper function. When the brain is deprived of oxygen, it cannot produce the energy it needs to maintain its normal cellular activities. At this point, the victim will experience clinical death, which means that the heart and breathing have stopped. Clinical death is a medical term that refers to the cessation of the heart's electrical activity and the absence of breathing. It is important to note that clinical death does not necessarily mean that the person is dead. In some cases, it is possible to revive a person who has experienced clinical death through prompt and effective resuscitation techniques. However, the longer a person remains in the clinical death phase, the less likely it is that they can be revived. Typically, after around 4 to 6 minutes of oxygen deprivation, irreversible brain damage occurs, which means that the brain's cells begin to die off, leading to permanent neurological deficits. In some cases, even if a person is revived after a prolonged period of oxygen deprivation, they may experience long-term brain damage and disability. Step 6. The biological death phase. At this point, the body has been deprived of oxygen for an extended period, and the consequences are dire. Biological death occurs when the body's cells start to die off and the organs begin to shut down. This is due to the lack of oxygen needed to fuel the body's vital processes. During the biological death phase, the body's organs begin to shut down one by one, starting with the brain and then progressing to the heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys. The cells in the body begin to break down, and without oxygen, the body cannot generate the energy needed to keep the organs functioning. This leads to a buildup of waste products and toxins in the body, which can cause further damage. Once a person has entered the biological death phase, there is no coming back. This means that, unfortunately, even if the person is eventually rescued and revived, they will likely suffer from severe brain damage, organ failure, or other serious medical complications. It's important to note that the window of opportunity for resuscitation is very small, and prompt action is necessary to save a drowning victim. Now that we've explored what happens when you drown step by step, it's important to remember that drowning is a preventable tragedy. Always swim with a buddy, never swim alone, and never leave children unsupervised near water. Additionally, it's crucial to know how to swim and to wear a life jacket when boating or participating in water sports. Thank you for watching this video on what happens when you drown step by step. If you found this information helpful, please subscribe to our channel for more healthy lifestyle tips. And remember, stay safe in and around water.